the future has two elements that are outside of your control and elements that are within your control. And so we try to understand the elements outside of our control because they will shape the environment and the context in which we decide. We have our opinions about what we want from the future and the decisions that we're going to make to try to influence the future to make those things happen. So absolutely, there are things outside of our control, often the challenges that come up, and then we have to keep adjusting the space that we have where we can influence and maximize our control over the future.
Hello, Graham. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, Austria, how's it going?
Good, good. I'm looking forward to this one. So I'm going to ask you something that I ask every guest that comes on. What is something that at some point felt impossible for you and now is your new normal?
Interesting question. I guess keynote speaking is something that you asked me 15 years ago. I could never imagine doing that. The first time I got on a stage and started talking, it was a terrifying experience. I remember it was almost like a blackout in front of me. I was so terrified of it. And now I do it on a weekly basis. So I guess that'd be something that seems definitely way beyond my capabilities, that is now very much a more day-to-day, or at least a week-to-week thing.
What was it that felt the impossible about it?
I guess it was you're just so lost in the fear. And this is an interesting sort of psychological phenomenon, is like when you're terrified, it does literally seem like the whole world's kind of caving into you and you can't really see anything that clearly. And so that feeling makes you wonder, how you're ever going to escape from this hole. So it makes it hard to believe that you're ever going to get on a stage and feel confident and feel like you really have something fantastic to offer, and that you're going to really connect with an audience and they're going to get something out of it. So yeah, it's very interesting how I went on this journey from running away from it to really, really enjoying it and leaning into it.
It's kind of that one concept that one of my mentors said about. She was saying it about shame, but I also have used it about fear. Chase the shame or chase the fear, where if you're afraid of it, you face it, and that's really where the growth is. And I think even with this is a good example of how did you navigate it? Because it's also, if you fail or if you get stuck, everybody that is listening or watching, they're going to see that, which adds another layer of kind of perceived hard of it.
Sure. I guess the way to think about it is, to be honest, most people aren't sitting in an audience willing you to fail, right? And if they are, then we don't have to care about those people anyway, right? But what really switched it for me was letting go of the need to be good and instead try to focus on just being useful. If people have showed up to hear you speak, if they've paid to see you speak, then it's because they think you've got something useful to tell them or some useful way of telling it. And so then you can really change the spotlight from being on myself, trying to be good, to the audience about what they're getting out of it. And by doing that, then I can really focus on them and their experience and take the spotlight off me. And so that really helped me when I got my head around that. And it's still something I tell myself even today before I get on the stage is, don't try to be good, just try to be useful. And if the audience doesn't like it, then it's their fault, not mine, right?
Okay, so the need to be good, that's an interesting one, because I think that can hold a lot of us back from even starting or even doing, because there's that expectation of, I need to be good before I start or before I take the first step, especially if it's something new or something we haven't done before. There's this unrealistic expectation. How have you navigated it, even with the public speaking? And what's your advice to people navigating that newness, but dealing with that expectation of, I need to be good before I have even started?
Sure, I'd say two things about that. So one is, you'd be much better off taking a experimental mindset to say, we're just going to try something and see what happens. And when you take that curiosity, then you don't have to be hung up on the outcome so much. You can just focus on finding out what happens. And then you can really have a mindset as well, what can we try today? what would I like to find out? Not, do I really want to try this thing and make it work, but rather just see what happens. And in fact, I was thinking about this just today. Is the other element is activity. When you have activity, the more activity you have, the more you will learn. So even if you're new to something, you can learn a lot just by doing that thing or doing things related to it or talking to people or having conversations and trying things out. And then you get more data points and you start to see the patterns. And if you're self-aware and you're aware about what's going on around you, you'll start to connect the dots. If you can do that in a methodical way, then great. If you are doing it in a more intuitive way, that's fine too. You will just feel your way towards getting better and better. So that's what I'd say about this need to think, oh, I've got to have this perfect thing. No, you just need to have a thing and see how it lands, because you'll never know. This is one thing I found out, even from the experts, is you never know what's going to work or what's not going to work. And the most successful artists or whatever creators in the world, they were successful because they created more than anybody else. And the proportion of the stuff that stuck or was a hit or whatever it was is tiny. But they managed to keep on producing, and some of that was successful.
Okay, so based on this, a lot of it actually sounds, and I have found this to be true, that a lot of things actually are simple. We just tend to overcomplicate them. So if it is that simple, that it's about activity and about doing it, why does it feel so hard? I feel like I have experienced it myself, and even like with some people, where there's so much either overthinking or that perfectionism or societal expectations or family or people around us, whatever might be the case, that I think makes it feel hard. But what is it in your perspective or your experience that is making it feel hard? Because in the way that you explained it, I would assume that, well, everybody should go and do stuff, do some activities or whatever. But there's always, I think that there's something that is holding us back. Like, what is that?
I think it's the need to be right. We are hung up on the outcomes. If you really want something to happen or you think something's going to be great, then you'll have the fear that it's not. Whereas if you have a hypothesis that you're going to test, then you just need to test it out and then see what happens. I used to tell people when I was managing teams in China that, I got loads of ideas. I have 100 ideas, but only 1% of them is any good. And that's what I spend my time doing, is trying to find that 1% of ideas that is going to take me somewhere useful. And yes, you have to plow through lots of bad ideas to get there.
So if we get hung on outcomes, what is it that we should focus on instead?
Ideas that you can test.
Yeah, I could see that. Okay, with this one, actually, I have objection here, because this is something that I have seen a lot. What if this is the wrong idea? Or what if I try and it doesn't work out and it's been, especially this one, the waste of my time? What's your response to that?
So the only bad idea that's going to be a waste of your time is an idea that you learn nothing from. So it is possible to have experiments where if you have one outcome, you might learn something, and if you have another outcome, you don't learn anything at all. So that one, yes, that would be a bad experiment, because you want to be able to learn something no matter what the outcome is. So, but as long as you learn something, no matter the outcome, then it's a good use of time. It won't be a waste of time.
With the outcome, as we were speaking, I was thinking that I don't think it's as much the outcome that might be affecting us as the meaning that we attach to that outcome. Like, for example, if I fail, I'm a failure, or whatever might be the case, which then if I see myself as that, then it's less likely I will go on and do another experiment because of potential fear of the other negative outcome, which then makes mean that I'm this or that. How to, I don't know if detach is the right word, but how to navigate that process where you can be in some ways neutral, or you can approach it neutral depending on whether it's positive or negative outcome. Because I think if it's positive outcome, awesome. But we can't predict that it will be positive or negative, because it's the experiment. We're looking for ideas, we're trying things out, so you can't know which one it's going to be. How to navigate those negative outcomes?
Well, I guess if you're going to try something out, then if you can either mentally or write it down and say, well, what are the possible outcomes here? So if you're going to, I'll give you, maybe put something on LinkedIn that you think is really cool, right? I mean, it's a typical example. I put lots of things out on LinkedIn, and it's very hard to even measure if it's working or not, because some things you put out there, by definition, people aren't going to like it, because then you're revealing your interest in this particular topic, and you might not want people to know about that. But when you're producing stuff, you think this thing's cool, this is going to be awesome. Okay, great, I'm going to put it out. Oh no, like the last 5, it didn't really do anything, and then you put some out random thing, and then all of a sudden everybody loves it. And there could be luck there, so you've got to also take that into account. There's a lot of luck in life, which can really twist our judgment about what's going on. But if you beforehand say, well, it could have this kind of outcome, or it could have that kind of outcome, or this kind of outcome, I wonder which is going to be, then hopefully you can let go a little bit. But once again, it's about the action. If you get used to failing, then it doesn't feel like failing anymore. And you'll realize actually it's not fail at all. You learn something from that.
So does it mean that we just don't fail enough?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I was reading an article recently about someone who's tried to rack up no's, rejections, right? And I did this even when we were at university. The last year of university, we were applying for all these jobs, and we were having a race to see who could get the most rejection letters. So this is in the day when people used to send letters, right? And we put them up in the kitchen. So yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm ahead. I've got like 15 rejection letters. Now you've only got 5. You're not trying hard enough. But of course, you need to get those rejection letters to find the few that are going to say yes and want to have the interview or whatever it is. So absolutely, you need to be trying to rack up the no's in order to find the yeses. Absolutely.
So how to shift that mindset? Because I can give you an example from my experience with basketball. Like, I was really good. I didn't see that at the time, but I started to wake up at like 5 a.m. when I was like 10 years old. Mainly it was from insecurities, but it worked. I got better. And I would literally train like throughout the year. Like, I would make my own programs in the mornings and things like that. And I got to the point where I was playing the whole game without needing rest. I didn't even look at the bench. I was just playing, and I was one of the best players. And then I got to the tryouts for the national team. And in my mind, I was like, what's the point of trying? I won't get in anyways. I was already convinced I won't get in, even though like I could have got in. I was really good player at like national level, but I was so convinced. And then when I was thinking more about it, I was like, I understood that if there was a possibility of failure, I wouldn't be doing it. I wouldn't put effort in, because I'd rather fail without trying than actually try and give my best and fail. At least that was the thinking at the time, that looking back, when I would think about it, I realized and I wasn't aware of it as well. I was just like convinced, well, I'm not good enough, so I won't get in. How do you have any advice to people who might be in a position or in a place where they might be so afraid of the failure that it stops them from taking any action, especially the uncountable action?
Yeah, it's interesting you give this example, because what you've done in that situation is given yourself an excuse to say, well, I didn't try anyway, right? And it's a very typical kind of thing we do, is to give ourselves an out, to say, well, I don't know why I didn't get in. I don't have to confront the fact that I might not have been good enough because I didn't really try. Which of course you probably didn't feel that great about later on, right? You probably wished you had tried and probably had got in.
I think for me, the biggest thing looking back was just that realization how much how important is your self-belief, because it wasn't that in reality I wasn't good. I just didn't believe I was good. I didn't believe I could get in. So I think it was less about my ability, because I was probably out training everybody in the country. Like, I was training like crazy. I was doing so much work extra, but I didn't see that. I only saw the things that I did wrong. And I had this it's kind of like I had this glass ceiling of what I believed I can do. And anything above that, oh, that's not for me. I don't deserve that, or I'm not good enough, or whatever might be the case. So I think looking back for me, it's really eye-opening to see how much I limited myself based on what I thought was true about myself. And I would completely disregard all the work that I would be doing or all the things that were going right. And I didn't give myself those chances to actually try out and see if I can get in or not because of those like insecurities or fears or whatever might be the case.
Sure.
So that's for me something that being mindful about that. One is I want to find a way to help others not to do that, but also to apply it in my life moving forward, where if I see that in some places I'm trying to play it small or I'm trying to
Mm.
be like, oh, I'm not there yet, whatever might be the case, I'm like, is it true?
Sure.
And try to challenge that.
Well, I would say, I have to ask actually, because often in these situations, maybe the calibration of your expectations of yourself and what's going on around you, obviously a little bit off. And so, who is around you at the time? Because when you have a support network, it could be friends or whatever it is, or family, who are managing to convince you that you are capable of this thing or that you don't need to be a perfectionist or whatever it is, then that helps with the self-talk because you can't it's not always easy to do everything yourself, right? So yeah, that's why I'm wondering who was around you at the time, because you should have had a coach who was going, come on, you can nail this,
I
right?
think my problem was that I didn't share it with anybody. Like
Right.
nobody really could know. Like even when I said one of my teammates years later, I think it was like when we were out of basketball, I said to her like, no, I was like insecure and all that, and she's like, really? Like I could have never thought, and I'm
Mm,
like, what? I thought it was like obvious. So I think I was just really good at hiding it or not talking about it. I just felt like I just have to deal with it. It's part of life or kind of that experience. So I didn't talk about it much. And I think there was also a lot of like big thing that would stop me from talking, which I understood was the shame. Like I would have the shame of like, oh, I'm not there yet or whatever, even though the standards I would have were like unrealistic. Like I would be the like for so many years, I would be at the top of my class. I would be like in basketball, one of the leaders, if not like one of the best players. Like everything was kind of like super high level. And most kids at like 10, 12 years old, they don't wake up at 5 a.m. to do workouts.
right.
They just don't do that. So for me, a lot of it was initially when I became really self-aware, that's when I got into psychology and I was like, oh, I want to fix myself because I could see all the things that were wrong with me. But I didn't think to actually go to somebody and ask for help. I felt like I had to do it by myself. So
Mm,
I think a lot of it was, I don't think there wasn't support system, but I just didn't allow myself to reach out for support or it wasn't an option in my mind
yeah,
because I
yeah.
think it was just like I saw it as a weakness.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's very typical, right? We, particularly, society in Britain is very much, you should be able to figure it out yourself. A very self-reliant kind of culture. But the reality is, it helps a lot. I mean, this is why sports psychology is now such a big thing, and we can learn a lot from sports psychology in terms of letting go of the self-talk and just trusting in your body to do things, particularly in sports. If you look at, I'm not so familiar with basketball, but more like golf and tennis, where those things where there's all kinds of things can be going on in your head that will have just very minute impacts on the way you contact the ball. And when you can let go of all that stuff and just trust your body to do whatever it needs to do, then you can really get in the zone and play your game. But often you need psychologists to come in and say you need to, forget about all that stuff that's going on, and just play your game, and whatever that game is. It doesn't even have to be sport, right?
Do you have any advice with that letting go when somebody is in like high pressure situation or they need to perform or they might even catch themselves having those thoughts or doubts? Like, what would be your advice to navigate it?
Sure. I mean, any kind of self-reflection is useful. If you can, step away from the situation for a little while, depending on what it is. If you've got some situation where you've really got to perform, then if you can, take a deep breath. Even before I go on stage, I will warm up my body. I will take a deep breath. I will sort of be aware. Am I nervous about anything, or have I, is everything okay? Have I remembered everything? Is anything nagging me at the back of my head? And then yeah, just to, try to find out if there's anything else I need to be doing. But really just trusting in myself. Um, I think if you really have some like a high present pressure presentation or something like that, you have to say, well, once again, why am I here? I have this opportunity, right? I've someone's, given me the chance to have this high pressure opportunity, right? And maybe the pressure's all on me. Maybe the pressure, no one else is thinking it's a big deal. So, what really is at stake here? And if you can transport your mind to the future after you've done this episode, whatever it is, and say, okay, well, say it went well, say it didn't go well. What's happened? Am I still alive? Am I still still doing what I need to be doing? Probably it's going to be fine, and then you can let go of a lot of the rubbish. We often, when I was in public relations, people used to get all kinds of upset about the relationship with the client. The client's upset, we're upset, everything. I was like, look, everywhere we're in public relations. We're not flying fighter jets. We're not working in a hospital. Whatever happens, everybody's going to be fine. And if you think in 6 months' time, chances are the client will have moved on to a different company. You might have moved on to a different company. Everybody's going to have moved on, and whatever happened today is just going to be a story we've got. No one's. It's not going to have any long-term impact.
That's a really, in some ways, I think it's like high level perspective where you're able to look at it from the side and kind of see how important or not important or how life threatening this situation or outcome is or not. Which, before we get into topic of like certainty and uncertainty, which I really want to talk about, I wanted to ask about, you mentioned self-trust. That is something that it kind of links to certainty and uncertainty as well. Because I had somebody a few years ago tell me that I need to make a program about how to navigate uncertainty or like change in life. And I was thinking, interesting. I have never even considered doing that. And at that time, I had just moved here, and I moved like literally with just like 2 months notice. I came to visit my friend here, and I was like, oh, I kind of like it here. And after that weekend, she was like, well, if you want to move here, my friend is looking for somebody to rent a flat. And I'm like, I might as well. So I moved here like 2 months later, and there was no like plan or anything like that. It was just like, it just felt right. And I would have people a month later message me like, how are you? How are you getting used to it? And I'm like, I was good the first day. Like I was fine. And that's when I realized, and I was actually at that time I was told about start like making that program. And I was thinking about like, why was it that I didn't get that affected by it? And one thing that I realized is usually when we make decisions, especially big decisions, it can go right and it can go wrong. And I understood that I had gone through enough experiences where things went wrong that I had built my trust in myself to be able to deal with whatever is the outcome. So it's not just that, oh, I'm going to make this decision with expecting only the right, which naturally we want things to go right, but it doesn't always go right. So through those experiences where things didn't go right, I have learned that I got me, I trust myself to find a way, and I'm probably going to figure it out. That's where like, with going through enough of those situations, I would get to the point where it's harder to throw me off because of those past experiences. But I'm curious what helps to build that self-trust or ability to rely on yourself to figure it out.
Well, it's interesting you say things have turned out well and things didn't turn out well before or anything else. But you have no idea, right? Maybe it was a terrible decision what you've done because you've missed out on all these kinds of opportunities if you'd just gone on a different path, right? You have no idea. And so, having faith in your decision making and accepting the outcomes, and of course, trying to, I don't want to say optimize, but trying to learn from your experiences to make better decisions for the future. And so that sounds like that's what you've done, and you're content with the situation you're in now and the direction that you're heading in now. And
I'm already looking for the next place to move.
Right, exactly.
But it also has been like just like a sense of, I feel like this place has fulfilled a lot of what I needed to get from it, and I feel like the next place is coming, and I'm also like excited about it. And the moment I feel excited, I'm like, okay, I don't know what's on the other end. I don't know what's like once I move or whatever might be the case, and if I will even get the visa and all that. But for me, it's and actually I like what you said about that. Like I didn't know whether it's gonna be right or wrong. And usually I like to say that you make decision right, because a lot of times we don't even we struggle to make decision, and we have regrets about decision even before we have made decision. You already regret it. You regret of, oh, maybe that one could have been better, and you haven't even made that decision in the first place. We have these like, well, actually, with this one, what are some of the things that you have learned about decision making? Because I understand you have been looking a lot into that.
Well, tying into what you've just been saying, right? It's not just about making decisions. It's also feeling good about the decisions that you've made. And this is almost a challenge. And so, for example, there's some research about people who are asked to, I think they made some photograph or they took some photographs and then they were asked to choose which one they preferred. And then they were said, okay, the one you don't want, there were two groups. So for one group says, the one you don't want, we're going to destroy it. So you kind of like committed to this choice. And then for the other group, they said, well, you can redecide later on, right? And for those who didn't have a choice, who just sort of had to pick one, and then the other one was supposedly destroyed, were actually more satisfied with the picture that they chosen than those who could still undo their decision, even though those who didn't undo the decision, even though even those who had the chance to undo the decision didn't do. They still stuck with the original photograph, but they didn't feel so good about it. So can you see the result is absolutely the same? That both groups chose pictures and then almost exactly the same had the same picture at the end, but just having that option to choose another one made that choice less satisfying, right? So there is something, there's a lot about how we make decisions and then second guessing ourselves, revisiting it, which can all really undermine our satisfaction from the decisions we make. And I'm sure you're familiar with the ideas of satisficing, where you can be trying to like get the best decision and optimizing and trying to make the best choice, or you're just going to choose the best thing that sort of fits the purpose that you want it to do at the time, and then just move on. And people find that yes, maybe those who are always trying to optimize and make the best decision actually end up in a better place, but the ones who are satisficing, just sort of making do with the best thing that they find in the shortest amount of time, are actually happier with the place that they're in. So where would you want to be? Would you want to be having a better job and more paying money, but more miserable? Or would you want to be having a better life, basically?
Yeah. Do you know what was contributing towards them feeling certain way about that, like that end result, where like the group that had no option or like no chance to go back, they felt better than the one that had chance to go
Hmm.
back?
So what about them?
Like what was the, or like what caused it, or what was the reason behind it? I'm just thinking in, is there a way that it could be applicable to our daily lives with like decisions? Do we need to have less decisions, or what could be like more helpful?
I think the lesson from that particular study is make the decision and then move on. Let it go.
Don't second guess it
That's right. That's right. Unless
and
there's
trust yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Unless it's, I often talk about an evil triad of decisions which we completely waste our time on. What to eat, what to wear, and what to watch. And we spend countless hours every week thinking about these things.
Oh my
And
gosh, yes.
so even in my talks, I actually asked people, I said, who here can remember what you had for lunch on this day last week? And I do this at the beginning of all my talks. And there's always one person puts their hand up. And I say, it's because you have the same thing for lunch every day, right? And that's right. They always have the same thing for lunch every day. The rest of us, we try to decide, we want to like make a good choice about what we're going to eat, right? We want to maximize our satisfaction out of it. We want to feel good about what we're going to eat, right? And yeah, it's completely meaningless. It has zero impact on our long-term well-being. A week later, even a day later, usually we can't even remember what we had. So there's no point to spend so much time trying to decide what to eat, because the people who have the same thing every day, not only do they save time deciding what they're going to eat, they don't spend any time on it at all, but they can actually remember what they had a week ago, whereas the rest of us can't. So there's a lot to be said for automating those kinds of decisions that we actually don't make any difference to us. The same with what to wear, and focus more on the things that will have some concrete impacts on what we're going to do going forward. So I mean, the most worthless thing is sitting in a restaurant wishing you'd had a different meal, right? You already spent 10 minutes wasted deciding what you had when you could have been having an interesting conversation. And then the worst is having sort of meal envy, saying, "Oh, I should have had what that guy said." So yeah, there's a lot to say about letting go of the decisions, particularly ones that just don't matter.
What do we get so like? What does it feel like every decision is important? Because based on what you've said, it does make sense that there are decisions that are more important, and then there are decisions that are less important. What does it feel like every decision, even with what we eat for breakfast, matters so much?
Yeah, no, I mean it really is. I mean, if you really write down every decision you make, and of course you're making lots of tiny little decisions every day, but everything where you actually spend some conscious energy to decide that, you should ask yourself, okay, what am I getting out of this? Another example is messing around on Amazon or whatever, trying to find some plastic thing that you
Oh,
need.
yes.
I remember many years ago now, I was looking for a toothbrush holder that I could take toothbrush into work. And I got on to this was in China at the time, so it's the Chinese version of Amazon. But you get on there, and it's like, oh, this will be easy, right? Okay, it only costs like 80 pence. So then you get on there, and they've got like, oh, do you want a pink one or a blue one? Do you want one with little sort of vents in there, little tassel on the end with a handle, all these kinds of things? I was like, I never thought about that. Do I want two for the price of one? I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter. 20 minutes later, I was like, what am I doing? This is an ATP thing. It totally doesn't matter. This one or that one. So it's like, you got to pull the trigger on these kinds of decisions because sometimes you might be spending the same amount of time, booking a flight, which is going to be hundreds, if not thousands of dollars or pounds. So I think we need to be a lot more critical, have a lot more critical thinking about how you spend your cognitive energy on those kinds of decisions. Most of them just don't matter.
And there's also like decision fatigue, right?
Yeah, sure. The research on decision fatigue is not as clear cut as I'd like it to be. It'd be wonderful. I mean, a lot of things in psychology, unfortunately, aren't quite as clear cut. But I think intuitively, we often, some people we get tired making decisions. We've got to keep making decisions. Um, and certainly in companies, you come across sort of senior leaders where they got people coming up, delegating upwards with their teams, keep asking them, "Oh, what should I do? What should I do?" Right? And they say, "Do you know what? I don't want to make any more decisions for you. Just go figure it out yourself." And so, there is some evidence that for sure that you can get tired of making decisions, and you won't make such good decisions as a result. I think the important thing is to be able to choose strategies, and then once you've chosen the strategy, don't spend any more time on the individual decisions. So, for example, if you're vegan or you're eating low carbs these days or whatever it is, then choose a strategy, and then the first thing you come across, just go for it. Don't spend any more time on the decision. You've already made the big decision, which is the strategy you're going to follow for whatever that is.
Which is another thing I wanted to ask you about, because I think one is decision making, where we get so stuck in decision that we end up actually not acting on it. Because I think I was thinking about it some time ago. There's two decisions that you make. One is to make change, then is actually to act on it. It's not enough just to decide to change. You actually have to take the first step. What's the balance between, let's say, the change or deciding to change something in your life? How to find a balance between planning and doing? Because I think a lot of times once we start to plan, we start to think about it, we can end up lost in that, and it can give that sense of, I have had it myself where I would get that sense of like, oh, I'm progressing, but I actually haven't done anything. I'm just like mapping it out, feeling good about it. But then when it comes to the actual work, a lot of times, one, it doesn't feel good. And two, it doesn't go according to the plan.
Yep. Yep. No, it's easy to trick ourselves into mistaking planning for doing. And you think the more planning I'm doing, the more doing I'm doing, but it's not always the case. But, once again, a little bit I come back to this experimental mindset because as you're planning, you should be, they should build in there some things you're going to test out, some ideas, usually. And so, how can you test those out? And that should be, you know, small steps to take you towards where you're going. I mean, it depends what it is. What kinds of sort of decisions you'd be making where there's a lot of planning going on, not much doing.
Uh, well, one would be like just getting in shape or training.
Hmm.
Like for example, now I have coming up most likely half Ironman. I want to do Ironman next year. Last year is actually a good example where I signed up to it 90 days to go. I have no experience in triathlon. Most I have done is half marathon, and I have 90 days to now prepare for half Ironman. And that's where I just had no space to I had like a plan that I quickly created with like ChatGPT, like
Hmm.
quick program to follow. But my initial plan was volume. Just do it. Just get body used to doing volume and long distances. Because like, and by the time I did the race, I haven't done everything at once. Like it's 1.9K swim, then it's 90K bike, and then you finish with half marathon. The most I had done was like half marathon. And usually it's like 6 to 8 months to prepare for it.
Yep.
And I had 90 days and I signed up knowing that the day that I signed up, I'm not in a place to finish it. So I didn't really have that much space to think, plan, or map out. It was like maybe, I don't even think it was few days. It probably was like one day on the bus back here that I just put majority of it together and I just went for it. And it wasn't perfect by like it was like far from perfect. The whole process, because I would end up training late and then I'd have to do some extra work and then I'm late on sleep and it's kind of like the rhythm was like pretty messed up. I still ended up finishing it, which I'm like, how did that happen? But now like with
Congratulations.
this one, thank you. With this one, I am now. I catch myself overthinking it. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I need this, I need that, because now I know more as well. So I did like 6 week swim program for triathlon specifically. Now I know more stuff about my bike also, like my current bike is too small for me. So I know that if I do it with this bike, it will be pain. And also like less improvement that I can make with it when you're not like comfortable on it. And with the run also last year, I was injured. So I was also learning to manage that because I had my right calf was like in pain the longer I would run. So I had this strategy of 50 breaths I run, 50 breaths I walk, 50 breaths I run, or I think it was like 30 breaths I walk. And I just did that and like that helped me to finish. This year I don't have it. And I'm like, okay, that's good news. But I would now start to overthink. I'm like, okay, I need to focus on business. So I can't really train. And I'm like, says who? Like I can still find time, show up, do it. Just don't. And this is actually, I think this is really good example of something we could discuss. The actual doing, it does fit in this. Like I can fit it in my daily rhythm. But the problem is with the thinking about doing. When I think about, okay, this bike ride, it will take me 2 hours, or this bike ride, it will take me like 4 hours. And then the more I think about it, the more I have the sense that I have less time, even though if I just stop thinking and I just show up, this is the spot for my workout, show up, do the workout, done, move on, do the work, next workout. It actually is not a problem, but it's that mental that it's about thinking and trying to like optimize everything. I think that's what is getting in the way. I still show up, but I do see how I'm losing a lot of time literally just thinking about it instead of just doing what's in front of me.
And thinking is probably worrying more than thinking positively about that experience, right?
I don't think I'm as worried as I am kind of. I think it's indecision about what makes more sense to focus on or what do I want to put energy into. Because if I'm not here next year, I would want to do the race. Now we are like, as we're recording, it's like 9 weeks away. So it's like, and I'll be away in like Ireland for like another week or so. So it'll be like 8 weeks. I have 2 months until the race. So it's
Hmm.
really tight schedule and my training will have to go up. So with that, it will take my time away from the work. And also it's quite tiring to do that. Like last year I was training like 20 hours a week easily. So it was like my whole weekend is pretty much training. That's when I do long workouts. I'm just out and I'm out for like 7 hours cycling.
Yeah.
And then also you need to recover from that. But but now I have better endurance. I'm in much better place, like physically. And I think it's less worrying, because even last year I had really interesting, like, first 3 recordings we did since I relaunched this podcast with my friend was about half Ironman. And we were talking about me before the race. And she said, like, oh, you were like worried about it. And I'm like, I wasn't actually worried. I didn't feel worried, because in my mind, I was like, I don't know if I can finish it, but I'll find out tomorrow. Tomorrow I have the race day. That's when I will see. So it was actually quite interesting for me to experience having no stress, no anxiety, no nothing, doing the race that I have never done. I don't even know if I can finish it. I definitely didn't have enough time to prep for it. I did my first open water swim less than 10 days before the race. So it was like everything was packed. But I don't think it's less, I'm not as worried about the race. I know I can finish it. Like, even if it's just purely on willpower, I'm going to do it. But I think it's more so just trying to think, well, this is a good example with literally what we have been talking about. Like, what's the best thing to do? What's the best thing to focus on? I think that's the main thing.
Well, it's interesting you're talking there, because as I'm thinking, it sounds like almost like you've got a to-do list every day, but you're not 100% committed to whatever's supposed to be on there. Or I should say that a to-do list is the worst thing, quite frankly. If it's
Yeah.
important, it should go in a calendar, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Important. Busy people don't have to-do lists; they have calendars, and then they just do whatever's in the calendar. And so that, they don't. Whoever it is, Donald Trump doesn't sort of get up in the morning and say, "Oh, should I do this or should I do that?" No, it's already been decided. He just does it, right? And so that's one thing. To take the stress out of the decision is to take it ahead of time. There's a technique called the Ulysses contract. I don't know if you're familiar with the Ulysses contract, but it's basically, so Ulysses was which mythology was it? But anyway, he was on a ship, and he got his crew to tie him to the mast so that he could listen to the songs of the sirens without directing the ship onto the rocks where the sirens were singing, right? So this is what he did. So, and then he got all his crew to put wax in their ears so they couldn't hear the sirens either. So the idea is that you do something ahead of time, which then forces you to do whatever you're supposed to be doing when the time comes. And so in this case, it sounds like you'd be good if you just set your schedule, whatever, for next week.
It is set.
Just do it. Yeah. Okay.
It actually is. Like, I have it in my calendar. I have mapped out all the workouts there in my calendar as well. So now as we're talking, I'm actually thinking that it actually might just be just purely just overthinking. Because what I have to do, it's actually I have in my calendar written, like, even like, I use Google Calendar. So I have in description written what exactly I need to do for each workout as well. Like with the bike or swim or whatever, I have it put in. So I think, and I had got to this realization with one of my mentors as well. I think it might just be purely overthinking. Because what I have to do, it's already in the calendar. I just need to switch off that thinking.
Yeah. So what do you think?
And just go and do. I don't know. Like, I'm just overcomplicating everything. I'm being a human, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's good to think, right? And sometimes it's just good to do what you're
sometimes
told.
It's too much.
Your calendar's telling you what to do. So,
you know what it could be? It could be that that wanting it to be perfect, or just like getting too stuck in the detail, even though the details already are taken care of. I just need to show up and do what I need to do. It's just that, because I recently, before I went to Rome, I had this like really good schedule that I'm now getting back to, where what helped me with even like doing more work has been to break up my work with some workouts. Whereas before I would try to sit like long hours through the work and I would get like tired or want to distract myself. Now it's like I wake up, work a few hours, go to do the workout, work more hours, do the workout, and in the evenings or like whatever. When I have calls, like, it's easy. Like, for me, calls or recordings, that's something that I love to do. But with the work that is just like you just sit and work with that one, it has helped me to break it up, where by the time I'm getting tired from the mental, I go do physical, and then I break up the physical with the mental, and then I do the mental again. And
Mm.
then I would have these hours stack up where by the end of the day, I'm like, I don't feel like I have been working that much, but actually have worked a lot and I got both workouts done. But I think as we speak, I think the biggest thing is just overthinking. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just
I
need
mean,
to,
it sounds like you're almost revisiting the decision. You know, you're revisiting whatever's been decided in your schedule, whereas actually have faith in the strategy that you set for yourself. And
yeah, I'm being an
if it needs
example of what we've been
tweaking,
talking about.
yeah, yeah. And if it needs tweaking, you can tweak it for next week. But for this week, you're just going to see what happens. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And then you can change it again the following week, right?
How to let's it also is reflective of like my experience, but how not to overcomplicate it. Because I think especially I have seen it with myself where like once you get in the rhythm, you're in really good rhythm and then you get off the rhythm. Let's say I go on vacation or something like that. And then once you get back, you kind of expect to be exactly where you were before you got back when you were in that momentum. How to navigate getting back into it. I have actually a good example. A few years ago when I was living in UK, I started to do habits. I call them baby steps. So every month I would have like I went crazy with it. The fifth month I had like 33 things I would do every single day. I would check them off. I had my like table, everything, like everything was green and I had percentages of how much you finished and all that. Which was like insane amount of things to do every day.
I'm curious how many you're
Um,
still doing.
I have changed it since, where at this point, doing it that way wouldn't serve my lifestyle. But at that time, I feel like that was exactly what I needed to do to show myself that I actually can show up and do things because I would struggle with that, with like consistency and actually getting things done. But a lot of it ended up being what I call feel good productivity. Those are not like the big needle movers. It's just the kind of, they were like good things. I got like good results. But through that experience, what I would then end up doing is I get off track with that. And then once I get back, I expect myself to be right where I was at the finish line before I stop.
Mm,
Instead of being like, okay, start with like 3 to 5 baby steps. And with baby steps, I usually describe them, make it so small that it feels ridiculous not to do it.
yeah.
Like that's where I would want to start. And but then of course I would be like, well, I can do more. And then what ends up happening is I would put them too big, where I actually can't end up doing them sustainably. How to, let's say somebody who has gone through, they had like great momentum for whatever reason they're off that momentum, how to get back into it without maybe like beating yourself up, because that also can happen along the way.
Yeah, I don't have a great answer for that. Apart from you have to accept the fact that you're going to have to go back to some, maybe not baby steps, but child steps. That that you're going to have to build up again. You know, get back into the swing of things. You know, there's no because there are no shortcuts unless you're continuing to do that thing during the holiday or whatever it is, right? So when I go on holiday, I still try to go running in the mornings because yeah, it's impossible to be drinking and eating for like 7 days or 10 days or whatever, and then come back and go, I'm just going to go for a run this morning. It's not doesn't feel right anymore. So yeah, I'd say accept the fact and maybe build it in. Once again, if you can build that into your schedule, before you take the break or whatever it is, and build that into the schedule after you're back again, then once again, you don't have to think about it. And this is really quite important. Is if you can, when you're in clear-headed and sensible, if you can make decisions that you're just going to blindly follow later on, then that makes that makes life a lot easier.
Do you have any advice when it comes to like what you talked about, future kind of making your decisions for your future self already, where you just have to pretty much like show up and execute? Is there any way or how to make it better? Any advice you have about that?
Yeah, nothing more really to add than what I've already said. I think that the three ways to do that are: one is to be clear about the vision that you have, because we can have ideas about what we want to be. And if we're struggling to get there, often it's because we don't really want to do it. We think we want to do it, but we actually don't. And I often give the story about an investment banker I was working with, and it wasn't just one, actually, there were many examples. But these investment bankers would say, if you ask them, they'd want to be, more senior investment bankers. And then I'd ask them to tell me what their life would be like as this more senior investment banker. And when they actually were forced to think about it, it wasn't that much fun at all. And then I would ask them, well, what would you want to be doing instead? And they were talking about all kinds of other things. They want to be running a surf shop on the Gold Coast, or they want to be an architect, or they want to be running art funds, these kinds of things. And so I wanted to be clear on the vision. I say the second thing is then to have a strategy that you want to execute. And sometimes you need to play that back from the vision back to the present to make sure that it's going to work okay. And once you've got that strategy, then you can log that into the activities that you're going to have. And then it should be that those activities, when it comes to doing them, you don't have to rethink it. You can keep adjusting as you go along, but you're not revisiting the decision too much, unless it starts to seem clearly incorrect. But I'd say that's really how to make sure that you are moving in a certain direction, and that's a desirable direction that's going to take you to a more flourishing future.
I think that's what I'm doing with them. So there's vision. Vision is pretty clear. Strategy, I think that's clear as well. But when it comes to activities, I think that's where this is so funny. Like I mapped the thing out, and then once I go through it, I'm like, no, I need to make it better, or whatever may be the case. Instead of just like, don't think, show up, do it like you said. Like even if it's just for a week, just do that. And then it might even be better to do it for a month, since like in a week I can only adjust like small bits of it. And then instead of
Well, tell me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, well, tell me. So you did the half marathon, the half Ironman last year, and then, is this still called Ironman or Iron Person? Ironman. And you got an Ironman this year, a half Ironman this year. So you probably got more sophisticated understanding about what's required to do an Ironman. But in terms of volume of learning, you probably learned more during those 3 months last year, I suspect, just by doing it. Am I right? Yeah.
I did learn. I think I also learned a lot in the sim program that I did, but it also was because of like signing up, showing up, doing it, and listening to the coaches. So I actually remember thinking that it was literally within the first week where I was like, wow, there's so much you can get done. I was training so much, but I also was getting so much done outside of training that I think it's just that in some ways, and I think this is really valuable for listeners, because a lot of us, we can get so much in our heads that we end up we get so stuck in the head that we don't do. Instead of just, the way I describe what I did, even with half Ironman, I just committed before I was ready. That's what I did. And then I just had 90 days to figure it out. And whether I would or not, it's kind of like that experiment approach. Like by the end of those 90 days, I will see if I did or I didn't, or if I can prepare with the approach that I had in those 90 days to finish it or not, which I did. But I think what I have seen is that instead of just creating whatever is the program and sticking to it, like a month later or something, I'm like, oh, I need to. At this point, I'm actually quite clear on the races that I have coming up, where those are set in stone and they won't be changing. So that is helping a bit more, because before I wasn't too sure on what races or when I would want to do, but those are pretty much set in place. The Ironman is a tricky one because I would want to do it in March, and that's where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. But that's like, I think it's like 8 months away. So that's a lot of time. But as you were speaking about the vision, strategy, and activities, that's what I realized is that I would have this pattern of going back to the activities or trying to change them instead of just doing what I have set in place, and maybe giving a bit more time to test them out and see if they work, which to some level I actually know they work. I just need to do them, and that's it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, what an experience to be a human. um, I had a question on vision, like how to get clarity on vision, because it's also something that I see a lot from like my generation and younger, is that like that sense of we need to find our purpose. We need to know what's the purpose. And but at the same time, when I would talk to those people, a lot of them, they don't know what is it that they actually want, or even who they are. They just a lot of times think this is what I should do, but actually haven't stopped to think like, what is it that I want? What is it that where I would want to be? How I want my life to look like? Do you have any advice with the getting clarity on like what's the vision?
When you say purpose, I'm curious about your definition of that.
I honestly don't know. I don't think I'm too stuck on the purpose. I have heard others be really concerned. Actually, I'm curious to find it. Purpose. Um, because I I don't I don't know how I would define it. But I also don't think in my life I I don't know if I want to say it matters or not. I'm really similar. I have really similar relationship with happiness, where I don't think about it. I don't think about whether I'm happy or not. Um, I think I'm more so focused on uh, what is it? Maybe fulfillment or sense of fulfillment, or feeling like I'm contributing or I'm getting better. But I have never really had that sense that I need to find my purpose. Maybe I naturally found it early on, or whatever might be the case. Um, but I have never really had that sense of I need to find my. But I have heard so many people talk about it and feel so frustrated that I don't know what they want in life. And one thing that I have learned when it comes to purpose or meaning, I actually get a lot of it from that exploration, from going to places where I feel like, even with Ironman, I did it just because I thought I can't. Like, that's the only reason. I was so convinced for years I can't run long distances. I just can't do it. So when I was in UK and I was in personal trainer courses, there was a one course mate who I made him Ironman program. And I remember thinking, oh, it would be nice, but I can't run. And then a few years ago, I watched the movie Brittany Runs Marathon. And I was like, well, if she can do it, I probably can as well. So I instantly found a program, started training it. Then like a few months later, I finished my first half marathon, and I finished second to last as well. And with that whole experience, I started to kind of do that, chase the impossible, what I think is impossible. And then I'm like, is it really impossible? Did I actually try? And even with running has been like a big block for me. I don't like the word hate. I usually say I dislike it with passion. Where I have never been good at it. I had never been fast. And I would have a lot of limiting beliefs around it. And that's where I was like, well, now I have finished the 4 half marathons and half Ironman, and I still don't see myself as a runner. And one of my friends, he was like, does it matter? I'm like, actually, I don't think it does. But I now want to get myself a running coach to actually work on it and be to test the theory. Am I actually slow, or I just have convinced myself that I'm slow? By the way, I found a definition of purpose. There's few. The reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists, a person's sense of resolve or determination. Um, that's what I found. But yeah, I haven't even thought about how I would define it.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because I think these words like purpose and why and values, I think they have this kind of almost what's the word? Maybe religious or supernatural kind of meaning. Whereas actually it could be just as simple as things you like, things that are important to you. And you don't necessarily have to see this as a big decision, or a decision you only make once, or as something that's really concrete. Some people, they know from the age of 14 or whatever they want to be a vet, and then they spend their whole lives being a vet, and they have a great life and awesome. So, okay, great. I can be envious of those people. I never had that kind of experience. I was an English teacher for a little while, and then I was a journalist, and I moved into communications, and then I did a doctorate and came in or a psychologist and so on. So, but all the time I'm trying to, find some, like you say, satisfaction, fulfillment, sense of usefulness, I guess, either to myself or other people, and maybe try to keep up with my own evolution about what's important to me. And I think understanding maybe your values, or which is simply what's important to you, is probably more important than trying to find a purpose. Because the worst thing you can be doing is working hard on things that aren't important to you, right? Now, if money's important to you and you're going to like sacrifice some time to earn money, that's fine. It makes sense, right? We've got to have sacrifices for various things. But the worst is to be earning all this money and then don't even know what you want to do with it. So I would say, understanding what's important to you, because what's important to you also changes over time. When you're a kid, you can remember when you were a kid, maybe, whatever trading cards were important to you, or basketball was important to you, or something else was important to you, right? And that's not the case now. As your age changes, your priorities change as well. So I would say, when as we're young, we're still experimenting. We're always trying to find out what other cool things might become important to us, we might get satisfaction from. So once again, I'd probably try to take an experimental view of it, a sense of curiosity.
I actually I love the way you described it, what's important to you, because it's much easier to grasp than what's my purpose. Because to to your point, like purpose seems so big and it feels like, oh, it has to be this one thing, where maybe it's not one thing. Maybe it's something that it's important to you now, and maybe a few years later it's not important, it's something else, and that's completely fine. And you don't get stuck on it. Because another thing that can happen is you now feel like, oh, this is my purpose. Now I have to do it even if I don't like it anymore. But it's like, well, you can do something else that is important to you, that you find valuable. Like, and I also think it's also something that, just like we as humans, it just evolves as you evolve. I think that the hardest, or the one of the, I don't want to say the worst things to do, but I have seen some people do that, is they sit in four walls and now try to figure out what's their purpose instead of going and doing something. Because I know that for me, a lot of even fulfillment or sense of like belonging or me contributing towards something, it has come from me actually going out there and doing something. If I would sit and try to think about it too much, especially if I haven't had too much life experiences, which for like younger people, there's not as much. We just haven't had that much time yet. Um, for some of us, for some of them might be, but in general, then it's really hard to try to understand what you like or you don't like if you haven't experimented enough with enough things to actually see what you like or don't like.
Yep, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And I would say, for example, and I think that the pandemic was a good example of people who had to kind of confront the reality that actually what they were doing wasn't that important. When you've got a lot of sort of sickness and death around you, you then and when you spend some time at home, and then you have to say, you're going to get to reassess your life and what's important and what's not. A lot of people who are doing various different kinds of jobs suddenly realized, actually, this isn't important to me at all, and I could keep doing this for the foreseeable future, and I'm going to end up in a not very useful place, so I might as well change direction. The bankers are quite interesting. I'll tell you this is, you can see an investment banker, obviously they get paid a lot of money, which means they can live in a very nice house, and the family and the children go to nice schools and what have you. But they're trapped in that. You can't escape it, right? And so, yes, you may want to go run a surf shop in the Gold Coast, but that's, you can't escape the life that you kind of trapped yourself in. And so it makes a lot of sense to indeed try things out. And if you're, doing something that seemed like a good idea, but actually it's not leading you anywhere that you particularly you're not that excited about, then you need to try something else.
Yeah, and it also not everything has to become like this big thing or your career. Like I had this with the triathlon. It's like people now ask me like, "Oh, are you a triathlete now?" I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. I'm a hobbyist. I'm just doing it for myself. I want to finish full Ironman because that's my like ultimate impossible that I had within like triathlon stuff. Just to prove myself wrong, and just go through the experience. And there's so much learning that I have had from it. I even was impressed that I was documenting my journey last year, and there were two people that reached out to me, and they said that they also want to do it this year. And I'm like, what? This is so cool. And like one of them keeps sending me updates. Like he recently did his first triathlon, and like he's told about like his experience, and I'm like, this is so cool to see how like me doing my journey can inspire somebody to, or even like not even inspire them. They might have already wanted to do that, but just seeing it from the side might have given them that like permission to give it, or a chance to give permission to themselves to actually go for it and do
Yeah.
it. So
You're an
it's
inspiration to us, Austria. You see, well, we'll all be doing triathlons soon.
and you know what's the best thing about it? The biggest, or like one of the lessons that I learned about it is you don't have to be exceptional to inspire people. Like I'm at best average. Like I'm not that good. I'm not that fast. A lot of it for me is just for the mental. But there's still people that have like two of my basketball team as they have signed up for a marathon with me in Athens that we're gonna do this year. Um, and they're like slightly looking at triathlons as well. And for me, it's so interesting to experience that and see that, because my assumption before would be like, oh, you need to be like the best, or you need to be like really high level to inspire people. But actually, you just need to do you. And also, by me being average, I inspired them to do it because I give them permission. Because they're like, well, if she can do it, then I probably also can do it.
Yep, yep, absolutely. No, it brings it closer to home, right? If you, and this is it, the things you come into contact with, you will take an interest in them, and they suddenly become possible. I mean, they'd heard of triathlons, but it was always a distant thing to them. Whereas you're doing it, made it seem more real and concrete, more possible for them, for sure.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to experience that, because I'm just fighting my own battles with it, and especially like my teammates, they make running look so easy, and I'm like, um, but for me, it's also inspiring because then I want to do more and I want to kind of work more on like getting better. I wanted to touch on the futurist mindset. Can you explain what that is and how did you create it?
Well, it certainly wasn't me that created it, but so I guess futurists are simply people who look at the future, right? And they use various techniques to do that. And I look at it from the point of view of psychology. And so I look at the challenges of looking at the future and then apply the techniques that futurists use to overcome those challenges. And obviously, I could talk all day about those, but the in a nutshell, we are very naturally always thinking about the ultra short term. So we think about the next few seconds in a lot of detail, and you're at the moment you're paying attention to what I'm saying, and your mind may wander a little bit to dinner or something like that. But to think further, even tomorrow, normally takes quite a bit of effort, let alone sort of next week or further into the future. And yet, modern life as humans requires us to make decisions that are going to have long term impacts. And so, for example, to train for a Ironman, for example, that requires some planning, and so you need to kind of work that back and decide on the actions you're going to take between now and then to make that happen. And that's really just using your futurist mindset, is to cast your mind into the future and in some way imagine yourself running an Ironman and what kind of situation you need to be in to be able to do that. And you need to be able to think, okay, I've got to swim. I can't remember how to swim 10 kilometers or whatever it is, and cycle God knows how far and run this marathon. And imagine yourself doing that, and imagine what it's going to, and ideally, you'd even go so far as to imagine yourself completing that. and how that's going to feel, because hopefully that would be motivating as well. But it's really just being able to recognize those challenges that we face, and use these various techniques that you can use to think more clearly about the future so you can make better decisions in the present.
Question I had, with the certainty and
Hmm.
uncertainty, because I think a lot of times, even if we have the goal or decision to make, there comes a lot of uncertainty with that. How does thinking about, is there a way to think about future and integrating that thinking, kind of managing uncertainty? Or I'm just thinking, what can help to deal with uncertainty in general? Maybe that's the question. Because there's so much that comes with that, especially if you try to change something or do something new, or even like getting back to example of half Ironman, there was so much uncertainty. I didn't even know what I didn't know. How to
Sure.
navigate that uncertainty?
Sure. Well, if you okay, it's things you really don't know. We try to look at the ranges of possibilities of the future. The thing about the future is, firstly, it only exists in our imaginations. So we can have data from our experiences that we can apply to the future, but I can't show you a picture of what tomorrow is going to look like. So we can only create it in our minds. The other challenge that we have is that we like to make predictions. So we try to create this picture of what tomorrow is going to look like, even though we don't know. And so much more constructively, we can look at the range of possibilities about what might happen. And I give the analogy of the crystal ball. If you take a crystal ball, and I go on here. If you take a crystal ball, right, the light goes in and it turns it upside down, but you still get the light coming out the other side. And so that's like a prediction, right? It's not really changed anything. You get a single view of the future. And so the analogy I give is what we really need is this, which is a prism. And so the prism takes the light and then splits it into its component parts, into its colors. And so you can see all the colors that are there. And when you look at all the colors, then you can see maybe this, indigo and violet and all these different kinds of colors. And you can start to look at them. And so the analogy I give is that if you take the light that's going into the prism as a dimension of uncertainty, and then the prism is a time frame, and then you can say, well, okay, this dimension of uncertainty, how might it turn out over that time frame? So a lot of people talk about artificial intelligence at the moment, for example. So then you've got to say, well, okay, artificial intelligence and what? Maybe jobs. So then we say, well, in 5 years, how is that going to influence the job market? Maybe it's going to destroy all the jobs, right? Maybe it's going to create lots more jobs. Maybe it's going to destroy some jobs, but create different ones. Maybe it's just going to sort of augment our lives so that we've all still got jobs, but they're just a bit easier because we've got this new technology. Or maybe some other kind of scenario, right? You can keep creating all these different scenarios. And you look at different time frames, you will get different scenarios as well. And the point is when you look at the future, it can seem overwhelming because there's so much of it, and there's so many variables, and there's so much uncertainty. And what you try to do is just take a slice and have a look at that thin slice and explore that. And then you take another thin slice and another thin slice. And then you realize, actually, I don't need to understand the whole future. I only care about a little bit of it. And I've sliced that bit up. And then I've really explored everything that can happen. And by doing that, you'll be amazed. Actually, you can have a very, very good handle on the uncertainties of the future. And they won't seem so intimidating anymore. And you can have a lot more confidence of your decision making because you'll have a really good understanding about what might happen.
So it's kind of like you consider different kind of scenarios, and through doing that, you can think of potential ways you can deal with it, react to it. Not react is not the good word, but manage it. So different actions you can take based on different potential scenarios, and with that, you kind of create that sense of certainty of, if this happens, I can do that. If this happens, I can do that. And that's why you can feel more comfortable going into that uncertainty.
Absolutely. So you can have an idea, even if the worst happens, what would I do? And what can I do now to mitigate that or better position myself? You can also say, okay, I've created all these scenarios, and actually there's a common element between all of these scenarios. And when you find those common elements, you have much more confidence that that's going to happen. And then definitely you can start to have a confidence in your decisions based on that expectation that that thing will happen. Once again, you don't know for sure, but you've by thinking these things through, and that's really all it is thinking through what could happen. Then you'll have a much better idea about what might happen, and you can start to have an idea about what you will do, what you can do now, and what you will do as those futures come about. And so you'll be amazed. You will feel so empowered if you just take these futures and slice them up, and then you'll see elements of this scenario happening, and elements of this scenario happening, and elements of this one, and it'll all start to unfold. And you'll be like, "Wow, I actually thought of that, or thought of something similar."
I think I've been intuitively doing that. Um, just like considering what could happen and how I could deal with whatever could happen. Um, and it gives you more of that sense that you're more prepared for that future, whatever that future might hold. What to do if you have no idea what could be those scenarios or the different slices?
Then don't worry about them. If they're really outside the bounds of your knowledge or the bounds of your expectations, then there's nothing you can do about it. You have to focus your efforts on looking at what could happen, and then what you want to happen, and the kind of decisions that you can make. If it's a real black swan, I mean, the point of black swans is you can't see them coming, so there's very little you can do, beyond just paying attention to what's happening. Being aware, and that self-awareness is really important. You can sense yourself, what's going on around you. When you're doing an Ironman or a triathlon or something like that, you can think about, okay, what happens if there's a problem with the bicycle, this kind of problem with the bicycle, or that kind of problem, right? Now, the problem you eventually encounter won't be any of those ones that you planned for, probably. But you'll already thought through these other things, and so you'll already be thinking about how I can deal with problems with my bicycle, right? So, and that's really the value about thinking these things through.
Yeah, it is something that I have seen that I usually describe it, like a good example is the podcast, where it's like I would try to map out everything from A to Z before starting. And I just don't know what I don't know. And then I go into it, and there was even like what we just did just now, like I just get thrown out, and I'm like, yeah, it just happens. But I remember I had like two issues. One was, it was like my podcast has been recorded in 3 countries, so that was back in UK, and I had my microphone volume just went down the whole time for whatever reason, and I would have to manually hold it up, but it would mess up my audio so bad you can't focus on the conversation. And it was like 2-hour recording. And I was like, oh, I feel so bad even reaching out to that person and asking if we can record again because of my audio, not their audio. And the recording was so good, but I was the problem. And I remember I was like freaking out. I'm like, I don't want to waste their time. It was really good. I don't know what they're going to say. And they were like, yeah, sure. No problem. We can do it. The other one was, as I was recording, my laptop ran out of space. And it's like, you can't predict that. And we're like in the middle of recording. It's like, oh, sorry, I don't have any space. And I'm like, would you hold a minute? And I'm just like trying to clean up the memory and everything while we're like in the call. But I just couldn't predict that happening. And it was the same with the half Ironman as well. Like I didn't predict that, one, I will have really jelly legs after a swim. Like the first 30 kilometers I did not know how my legs will survive the 90-kilometer bike ride. They were like so tired, and I hadn't tried properly the transition from swim to bike. I didn't have time for that. And second thing was after bike, well, also with bike, there was strong wind. So the whole time I would have to be down. When I was training, I was mainly up because it was more comfortable, and like, as I found out on the race, like my bike is too small. So the whole time I was down, by the end of, I think I did it in like 4.5 hours. By the end of it, my back was so bad I couldn't move. Like my second transition, which I only had to change shirt and shoes, it took me like 12 minutes to do that. I just couldn't move. I was like this, like taking shirt off. I just had the pain was terrible in my lower back. I just couldn't move. And I'm thinking, the only thing, like, one thing I realized is at no moment I considered quitting, but I was thinking, how will I run half marathon but I can barely move right now. And I have it like coming up. It's not like I can delay it too much. I have timeline that I need to fit in. And those are the things that I can't predict. I only can deal with them on the spot. But also, I think what helps, or what has helped me, is going through enough of those situations where something happens and you adjust. Something happens, you adjust. And you build that self-trust, and you're able to rely on yourself that I probably will find a way. If I won't, I will have really valuable lesson.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I mean, yeah, and I can only imagine you had some fantastic learnings from that experience.
I like
Yeah,
how
clearly you got the wrong size bike.
yeah, there were so many, like, and I had just bought, like, I think it was also 10 days ago, the cycling shoes. So the pain was terrible. Like towards the end, I'm just like, okay, last 10 kilometers, my feet is in terrible pain. I just have to go through it. But it's something that I like that Goggins said about the endurance races. He said that in every race, he lives like 5 years of life through that suffering and that pain and things going wrong, and you can't predict what will go wrong, or something hurts and all that, or something goes wrong. Through all that, you kind of pack a lot of like just dealing with things that come up, or like just frustration, or what do I do now and I don't know what to do. You just pack all that in that one experience, and you just have it all to go through. And that's kind of like nice package of lessons to take with you.
Sure. That sounds like a great experience. I can't imagine doing it myself, but I've done,
me too.
Yeah.
Before I ask you the last question, where can people connect with you, learn about you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's probably the best place. Graham Norris. You'll find me on LinkedIn there, and I have a newsletter as well, the DIY Futurist.
Nice.
Which you can sign up for, which has just got a couple of links a day that you may or may not find useful. And I've also got a website, which is also my name, grahamnorris.me. So happy to connect any way you like.
All right. We will have it in show notes as well. Last question I have for you. What is the impossible you're chasing now?
The impossible I'm chasing now? Ooh, good question. What am I chasing that's impossible now? Well, it may not sound that impressive, but a book, because I've actually already written a book, but it was so awful that I didn't do anything with it. But, it's one of those things, right? I learned a lot from writing that awful book. Writing the awful book will almost certainly make the next book a lot more useful. And so writing a book that people will find useful. And that's what I've done over the past couple of years, has been trying to understand what people will find most useful. When you talk about the future, some people's eyes glaze over. And so I really want to find ways to help people make better decisions by thinking more clearly about the future. So that's what I'm going to be working on.
Oh, I love that. Look forward to that.
Thank you.
Well, Graham, thank you for coming on, sharing your wisdom with us. It was really insightful. I know I got a lot from it, so I hope listeners
Wonderful.
will too.
No, thank you for inviting me as well, Oscar. I really appreciate it.